let's be honest, like the reason that a lot of publishers are doing this is because they set such high goals, thinking they're going to make, millions of dollars on these games. They spend way too much on graphic engines, putting multiplayer in there for no reason. I think Tomb Raider, although Tomb Raider's multiplayer is not too bad, so I can kind of get it. They can kind of get away with that. But they overspend on their budgets, and then they need to sell a ridiculous amount of new copies. And it's like with Square Enix complaining about Sleeping Dogs and Tomb Raider, and you know you can't set massive margins. You have to look at what you're selling normally and what's normally selling, and look at that. Don't look at Call of Duty. Call of Duty is an anomaly, and that number is starting to shrink, and it will get smaller. As interested as I am in Ghosts, it's going to get smaller. It's going to be like Black Ops 2. I love the concept, and I love Black Ops 2. I think the single player campaign in that game is the best they've ever had since the original Modern Warfare. But because people didn't like the idea of a futuristic Call of Duty, and most of them still bought it because they're fucking suckers and have to buy something with a Call of Duty license on it. I buy it because I legit love the game. Some people buy it just because in name. It's like how immediately I keep buying the NHL series because I'm a sucker for it. I admit that. I've told myself I won't buy NHL 14 unless it's like the bee's knees. But, that's yet to be seen. I still have to keep myself from buying it. But it's up to publishers for the most part that if they had spent their money wisely and set a proper budget and set a proper goal for how much they're going to sell in terms of copies of their game new, since they don't make anything off used copies, then they wouldn't be in the red so much. Like Square Enix has openly said they've really got to look back at their business practices because they lost a shitload of money. They lost a ton in the last little while. Because they stopped making good Final Fantasy games. That's a big deal. And Kingdom Hearts 3 still hasn't come out. And a new Chrono. See, I'm solving your problems already, Square Enix. Make us a good Final Fantasy, make Kingdom Hearts 3 so it'll keep people quiet, and then make a new Chrono game, and I swear to God, you'll sell so many copies of that. Now, if games were able to price themselves properly because they wouldn't be going over budget, there's a lot of games out there that you see for $60, look right at it and say, why isn't this 40? It doesn't make any sense at 60. It's like with downloadable titles. Why is this game 15? Shouldn't it be 10? Why are these things so high? It's the production costs, at least in my opinion. I think that's what it is. They're doing all these things that they think need to be in the game. They got to have amazing graphics. They got to have multiplayer in there, even if it's a single player focused game. There's got to be a multiplayer aspect to it. The idea that companies think that there's got to be more and more and more in the game. Think of a game as simple as Minecraft. Like, I wish I knew what the production costs are, but I guarantee you it means nothing compared to the money they're making now. How many copies have they sold? Is amazing. I mean, yes, it's an anomaly. It's something that hasn't happened very often. But I mean, you think about that, a game that didn't cost very much, and look at how much money they've made off it. And that's why you're seeing a lot more indie games coming through because, it's a very cost-effective solution, and if it hits, it's going to hit really well. So when publishers come around and, spend millions of dollars on a game and then not even get close to the amount of copies they need to sell to, even just to break even, I don't feel sorry for them. I shouldn't have to. I mean, even if it's a good game and not everybody shares the same opinion, you guys have to really research what you think's going to work. You can't just, make something and hope. Like, you can't do that in business. You have to do enough good research to see where you are. And especially with a game like Tomb Raider, like, I've never understood why they set such a high goal when you have to realize, Square Enix, you were putting out a game that it was reviving a franchise that nobody wanted to play anymore because it becomes such a terrible set of games. I think like 4 or 5 of the last games were so bad and so completely just sex-driven, just ridiculous games. You had to understand that even if you made one of the best games ever, you weren't going to make a ton of money off it because people want to see you prove yourself first before they really give it a shot. Now, the next Tomb Raider, considering how well the revival did in terms of reviews and all that kind of stuff, if you guys can keep that going and make a second game, it will probably sell just a little better because now people know it's back and it's not shit anymore. Now, again, this doesn't mean spend more money on it and cause your expectations for sales to go up even further. But you have to take into consideration that the game is not going to sell the way you think it is if you do not do enough research to understand that this game is not Call of Duty and will not sell millions upon millions of copies. You have to take into account what you think is going to be the prime spot. Like, I'm trying to think if they said they were going to have to sell like 5 million copies or something and it didn't even come close or something like that. And like, you got to understand, like, especially with a game like Tomb Raider, it's not a game that's accessible for everybody, especially with some of the grim nature of it. Like, that was a pretty dark game. You have to understand that that's not Wii Sports. That's not well, it's not Call of Duty. It's not Halo. It's not Bioshock. Well, no, I'm not. I don't think Bioshock's that great an example, but it's not a game that is either not accessible by everyone or a game that is accessible by a niche market, but a niche market that will come in floods to get. And because Tomb Raider was such a sleeper of a game and a game that belonged to a series that just did not have any respect at that point, you had to take that into account. And you didn't, and that's what caused you to lose money off that game.